Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my first video of 2023, and we are opening up with a great discussion. Should Boise State play Idaho? Idaho is, of course, in their fifth year in the FCS after deciding that the FBS was too challenging for them, dropping down to the FCS, and it has been a challenge, a rough go of it there. Not a winning season in the 4 years prior to this one. However, this season hired a new head coach, Jason Eck, coming in, and he led Idaho to not just their first winning season in the FCS, but also to their first playoff appearance. They had a great year, 7-5, went 6-2 in the Big Sky with wins against Montana, Eastern Washington, Idaho State, almost beat Washington State, a 24-17 loss there, and they were competitive against Indiana out of the Big Ten, a 35-22 loss versus Indiana. And they only had a 3-point loss in their first round FCS playoff game. So this recent success here by Idaho has got a lot of fans asking, should Boise State play Idaho again? Jeremiah Dickey has said he likes to play at least one FCS opponent a year. Boise State, Idaho have not met since 2010. Should Boise State renew the in-state rivalry? It is the exact question that I asked a bunch of former players who came on my channel as part of the 2022 preview series videos that I did at the beginning of last year's football season. And I asked each and every one of them, should Boise State play Idaho? Would you like to see this rivalry renewed? And these were their responses. Well, I'm glad that you brought up the Idaho Vandals because this is actually the surprise question I told you I'd be bringing in. It's a very controversial one. I see it posted all the time, and it's pretty much 50-50 down the lines what fans think about it. Do you still wish that we played Idaho?
Yes, 100%. I would like to beat them 100-0 every single but for the community here, it would help all the businesses here and fill up the stadium. I guarantee you, if Idaho came here to play Boise State, we would set a record for the number of people in the stadium. All of the businesses around the university would be slammed with business. And I mean, great for the economy. It's great for the tradition. And you got Alabama, Auburn, you have Boise State, Idaho, Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, the fans love those games, and so do former players and current players.
Well, one more question here on the personal interview section, then we'll move on and ask Carl Kiever it. So I got to ask you as well. Obviously, Boise State hasn't played Idaho in a very long time, but you were part of those teams that played Idaho. You were actually the first class to never lose to Idaho, and Boise never looked back. Do you wish that Boise State still played Idaho?
You know what? If you asked me that 8 years ago, I would say yes. I would say yes. I thought it was a huge rivalry. I thought it was good for the state. Now looking at it, I mean, Idaho's having a tough time competing in the Big Sky. So if they were, and I hate when we play one double A. To be honest with you, I think it's not good for our end of the year rankings, right? So I don't think we should play them personally. But that's one that's like, what are we doing? And I understand the tradition; it was there for years. Hopefully, it can get back to that stage. I hope Idaho does get better. I mean, we always say DAV, but I do hope they get better and do kind of root for them. So, hopefully they can get a turnaround. Seems like the new coach is pretty enthusiastic over there and has a goal in mind from what I read online. And then, if they can start beating Montanas in those schools, I would definitely love to see that rivalry come back.
But talking about other rivalries, I've asked every player before you so far, so I got to ask you too. Do you wish we still played Idaho? I know you're saying Fresno's the main rival, but do you still wish we played those Idaho teams?
Nah, they got some work to do. They do. they can be rivals with Idaho State. Let that be the rivalry of the state and let it go on to do other things. So I don't miss that. I mean, I hope the best for Idaho just because I'm a resident here and I live in the state and I know kids that are going to school up there. But you got to hold up, you got to do your work. Boise State was at that point where Idaho was, and they did it the right way, and they built, and look where we're at. So Idaho have to do the same thing, and they got to take some chances. Cutter took some chances on some players, and he had success. And so you got to be able to do that at Idaho. Once they get to that, then I'll take it. I mean, even if they are in the FCS, who wouldn't? If Boise State played, was it North Dakota State? Wherever, that would be a big game. And so Idaho can still, just because they're at that level, that doesn't mean that they can't build a program to something that's successful. And so we can have a rivalry. And so we can have that game. And so it actually counts for Boise State. Because right now, it's hard enough for us to try to get in one of those big bowl games. So we can't add another team that's not going to build value to our schedule and build value to a win or a loss.
By the time that you started playing for Boise State, it had been 4 years since Boise had played Idaho. There were maybe some fifth-year seniors on the team that remembered playing them, but of course it wasn't something that was on the top of anyone's mind. Was it something you ever thought about at all? Do you wish that we would renew this rivalry with Idaho going forward?
I do wish we would renew it going forward. I think it's good for kind of the camaraderie. Obviously, they're crosstown rivals. And it's, every year, why not play, the same team that's in the state and to play for something, I think that brings out the best of the best within the state, brings out a lot of your Idaho fans in the area. I apologize. Brooks is being out of control.
Sounds like he's saying play Idaho to me.
He is. He's ready to go. Look at, he's got the Boise State shirt on and everything.
All right. Go Broncos.
And so, no, I think it would be great to renew the rivalry. Again, I think it would bring out the best of the best. I always hear, I always run into older, former U of I guys in the Boise area, all this stuff like that. And they always tell me, oh, we used to run Boise State, back in the day. And I always hear the past is the past. It's not even close now. But I think that would be fun. Why not renew it every year? Why not make something out of it? And I think it'd be it's a big time, money game for both teams. I guarantee you sell out crowd, both, whether you're up in the Kibby Dome or you're down here at Albertson Stadium. So I think 100% they should renew it.
All right, last question here. By the time you got to Boise State, it had been 6 years since Boise had played Idaho. Do you ever regret not getting to play them? Was that something you ever thought about? Would you like to see the rivalry renewed?
I think it would have been fun for sure. I mean, just because of the history of it all. I think it's just at the point now where maybe it'd be fun for fans to come and see once or twice. I think it would be pretty, maybe it would be competitive, but I think it would be pretty lopsided for a majority of the games. And that's never really a fun, maybe it's fun for half, or maybe, like I said, it's fun for a season or two where fans get to see this rivalry renewed. But I never really thought much about it just because it just seems to me like they're in different situations now than where they've been historically.
Now, this question I've asked in every single video, so I ask it in this one as well. Do you wish that we still played Idaho? Of course, you guys were part of those teams that got to go out there and beat some local in-state butt. But do you wish that Boise State still did that, or do you think those days have kind of moved on and we're kind of beyond them at this point?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a fun in-state rivalry game, whether it's competitive or not. I think it's important for the community. But I grew up watching the Broncos, the Vandals play, and we didn't always win those games, right? And maybe now the tables have turned, or maybe that gap is, some would say, too far to correct or whatever. I still think it'd be fun and important. So yeah, I'd like to see the teams play.
Yeah, I'm going to second what Shu said. That was one of going into those games. I didn't have the history like I would, like, say, for instance, coming from Arizona. I know all about the Arizona and Arizona State rivalry. I know about all the things that they did there. And coming up to Boise State, and you really start to hear about the U of I rivalry. The first game that we played against them, we hung up roughly about 70 points. And I'm like, really, this is a rivalry? And so you really get into the historicals of BSU and U of I. And all of a sudden, as being on part of the team, it's like, oh, we finally have a winning record versus these guys. And I'm like, holy cow, they've been stomping us for that long. And so I think there's a lot of history there is where I'm getting at between these two teams. And it is very unfortunate to see that Boise State and U of I don't play anymore. Heck, out in the community, I still talk the same trash as I would playing ball against these guys to my neighbors who try to represent Joe the Vandal. Can't stand that guy. The other day was talking about going to U of I. I washed his mouth out with soap. I still can't stand U of I. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So as you can see, not an issue that brings consensus with the players, just as it does not with fans either. This is a question that really divides the fan base, pretty much 50-50. Really, a lot of times it depends on where they grew up in that rivalry. If they were used to Idaho beating down on Boise State, they would like the opportunity to continue to ride Boise State's success against the Vandals in recent years. And if it's more recent years, they kind of look at the Vandals as an FCS program that's not worth playing. But like I said, with the fact that Jeremiah Dickey wants to play an FCS program regardless every year, should it be this in-state rivalry? Should it be renewed? I had the discussion with former players. Now I want to have it with you, Bronco Nation. Let me know in the comment section which way you think this should go, which way you think Jeremiah Dickey should move on this movement, and whether or not Boise State should renew their rivalry series with the Idaho Vandals. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. 2023 is going to be a great year for Boise State football, and I'm going to have a ton of Boise State football videos throughout the offseason and the regular season, and I'm going to be renewing my Boise State football preview series, former players coming on just like they did last season. So make sure you like, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, let's start this year off right. Go Big Blue!